So in the interest of time, I'm not going to thank all of you, just say that I'm so proud and honored to be a member of this group, and that this is an incredible, fast-growing group, maybe because of the importance and human threat that we are living in these days. So first I will start to say that I wear several hats. So I am an engineer, I'm a scientist. I had 30 years in academia, studying and remediating pollution. Now, since 2016, I am an independent senator. I used to chair the Energy, Environment and Natural Resources Commission at the Canadian Senate. And I am a member of the National Finances Committee. So that allows me to have a landscape, a portrait of what's going on, answer some of the questions that were initially posed as which fossil fuels, how, who, where, when, who should pay. So let me give you some of the views that with the years I have come to conclude. So first of all, say that science is clear. You know, unequivocally, we know what are the causes of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. It's the combustion of fossil fuels. So when in your parliaments, people come and say, oh, we have to have a balanced discussion, and they bring half of climate change denial together with half scientists, it's not good. It's really an insult, because the science is clear. The other thing that is clear is that engineers have developed technology in several types of renewable energy. Call it solar, call it wind, call it tidal, wave, hydro, nuclear, biomass. It's there and it's already scaled up. And so it is not for the lack of technology that we are not moving. It's not because of that. And I keep saying in very late terms to everybody that humanity didn't left the Stone Age because of lack of stones. We left that age because we found cleaner, safer, cheaper ways of doing things. So the other important thing to say is that the polls that are run around the world for citizens, they are very much in favor of climate policies, stringent climate policies, getting rid of fossil fuels faster. In my own country, in Canada, there is 70% of the population that thinks that the government are not doing enough. So this is important. When I go to the Global South and I see the polls, it's exactly more or less 50% plus, you know? So the public wants action, and what we are not seeing is the action, especially in the G7 countries. Canada is the only G7 country that has not attained its goal of decoupling growth from greenhouse gas emissions. That is very sad to say. And we are the only G7 country that has not attained any of its climate goals. We are at our 10th climate plan, 10th, and we haven't attained this. What is missing then? What is missing then? So I cannot say that in my country what is missing is the legislation, because we have been giving a lot of legislation. Actually, one legislation that I helped the government to pass was the Net Zero 2050 framework. So we have a plan to make a plan that says that by 2050 we should reach net zero. And what we don't have is what is in the middle between today and 2050. And we all know that we cannot wait until 2049 to do all the effort. So what we are needing and requiring is transition plans. Transition plans for sectors. Every sector has different needs, different contexts, and of course, in every country it is different too. So we have to build science-based transition plans for every sector. Another reason because we are not moving is because the sector that should reach the net zero before any other sector is the financial sector. And what is the financial sector? Who are the members of the financial sector? Are the banks, the insurance, the investors, the pension plans. So if they are not moving towards net zero 2050 or before, none of the other sectors are going to, unfortunately, do it. And when we parliamentarians are going to understand this, we are going to understand that we have to stop asking things from our Ministry of Environment and demand more things from our Ministry of Finances, because they are the one deciding where to put the money. So for example, in Canada, the money goes to subsidies in the oil and gas. We give between 8 to 18 billion dollars per year to the fossil fuel sector. So how we can expect that we are going to reach net zero in 2050 if we keep giving so much money? And that distorts what economists keep telling us that will solve everything, which is the free market. So by now, I'm sure you understand that I don't believe in free markets. Free markets doesn't exist. They are lots of inputs of money through all kinds of subsidies. There was an agreement to stop fossil fuel subsidies by the United Nations like 15 years ago, and they are stuck with definitions. What is inefficient fossil fuel subsidies and what is efficient fossil fuel subsidies? So now that we know that it's the financial sector that is really taking a lot of time to join the movement, let's see what's going on in the financial sector. So we have internal mechanisms in every of your countries, and I invite you to go and look what are these mechanisms, how the government regulates the market, how the government regulates the banks, the insurance, the pension plans, the investor. Is very important. We have seen in the G7 group that governments have chosen different approaches. If I come and see what Europe have done, they are heavily regulated. They started a long time ago with their Green New Deal. And 3 years ago, they started working with their Green Taxonomy. United States doesn't like Green New Deal, doesn't like taxonomy, doesn't like even calling it climate change, yet they passed two major laws, two major acts, the Jobs Act, which is their version of the Sustainable Job Transition, and the Inflation Reduction Act, to inject $1.something trillion into the economy, but with conditions, going into the electrification of transport and development of renewable energy. But it's not only them. You can go and see China, which is the country that has incredibly developed renewable energy, is reducing coal, and they didn't do it through the more democratic mechanisms that we are accustomed in the G7, but they did it through market controls from the Shanghai Exchange Commission, but also through executive orders to push their battery and electrical vehicle and renewable energy. We have models, and we have to follow the model that is better for us. So now let's talk about renewable energy versus fossil fuel, because it's very important, this comparison. Right now, still in Parliament, people are still saying fossil fuel give us prosperity. I'm talking about the global north. They tell us it gives us prosperity, it brings us jobs. But in reality, when you go and you inspect the data, it's not that such. First, fossil fuels have gone to automatization, so the numbers of jobs that are produced are much less than before. Second, there is today the difference between conventional fossil fuels and unconventional fossil fuels. So while conventional fossil fuels, the one that is in the Middle East or in the north of Africa, where petroleum comes out by just difference of pressure and it's easy to refine, the ones explorations that are taking place today is more for unconventional sources of petroleum, which takes lots of energy to take out from the ground, or take out from deep in the ocean, or take it from, as in Canada, in the oil sands, extracted from the sands, from the oil sands. So when you really count the energy that you need in order to extract 1 barrel of oil and then produce energy from that barrel of oil, you will see that the process is very expensive, very inefficient, and very polluting. So we have to move from the fossil fuel change or supply to a renewable energy system. All the advantages is that, while you have to pay for royalties and you have to pay for very heavy equipment for the extraction of the unconventional oils, in the renewable energy, there is a sense of independence, a sense of local sources that really make you independent of geopolitical factors that are plaguing the fossil fuel sector. We say, and I have heard this even at the World Bank, IMF, multilateral banks, that fossil fuel exploitation is inflationary, while renewable energy sector is deflationary. And then in a moment, in a context where inflation is so important because it drives very high the prices of housing, the prices of food, the prices of medicine, and it disturbs the supply chain, it is very important that we move to a system that is deflationary. The problem also with, when you put your economy on the fossil fuel is that it affects a lot of things. Now, coming back to the financial sector, a couple of points that I want to make is this thing of double materiality. So, the finance sector, the banks, the insurance, the pension plans, and the private investors, they will tell you that they are very scared of transition because of the regulations that are going to change, because of the physical risk of these extreme weather events that are destroying important and essential infrastructure. In Canada, some of this infrastructure are not even finished to be paid. So when a road, a highway, a train, a rail train, or an electric transmission line falls and it's not being paid, so who's going to pay for that? So we have the insurance and the reinsurance. So on one hand, they tell you that they're very scared of this cost because these extreme weather events in the global north are costing billions per event. At the same time, they would keep investing in fossil fuels. So there is materiality here and there is materiality there. What are the governments doing? So everybody resists to financial regulations. Everybody resists. They don't like it. They tell us that, again, the free market is going to regulate itself. But it doesn't. It doesn't because we input subsidies. So the governments are relying on the regulators for them to disclose this climate-related risk. But they are basing this on voluntary actions, voluntary. So if somebody wants to say, well, I'm at risk, we'll accept that, and of course, this puts penalty on the ones that disclose. But disclosure is only sort of the diagnostics. It's sort of that this is what's going on, these are the risks. It doesn't reduce the greenhouse gas emission. So what we need is not only mandatory disclosure, but we also need these transition plans in detail. How a sector is going to, from today to 2050, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we have, for example, in Canada, where we have a oligopoly of banks, because there is only 5 big banks, they have all joined the Net Zero Alliance. But when you go into the details and want to see how much they have reduced their emissions, you see that it's 0. And when you go to the oil and gas that also have their Net Zero Alliance, and you ask them how much you have reduced, they will say intensity, in terms of intensity, meaning that per barrel of oil, they have reduced the greenhouse gas emissions. But if you don't put a cap on emissions, or you don't put a cap in production, and you have, as Francesco showed in Canada, they keep exploring and extracting oil, then the production continues and increases. And this is incoherent with a pledge of net zero 2050. Now, why is this important and why is critical that this financial sector aligns with the Paris Agreement commitments? Is because, as it was mentioned before, there are a lot of compounding effects. So we are living in a multi-crisis time. We have talked about biodiversity loss, but in reality, scientists have also been very clear. There are 9 mechanisms that regulate the planet Earth to be hospitable to humans. At least 6 of these planet Earth regulation systems are attaining tipping points. So it's not only climate change or global warming, but it's biodiversity loss, it's ocean acidification, is the disruption of important geochemical cycles of nitrogen and phosphorus, which is the nutrients, and pollution. Plastic is there, and plastic is 30% of our budget, carbon budget that is left. So we have to tackle also the plastic problem. And finally, we have to be very careful with false solutions. For example, some say that carbon capture, storage, and utilization will allow us to continue in the exploitation of fossil fuels. Yet, as an engineer, I can tell you that when I started my PhD 32 years ago, we were already using carbon capture and reutilization and knew that this has very limited and very expensive. So with that, I think that just to say that while there is a lot of challenge, and one of the challenges is really forcing, guiding, pushing the financial sector to join the transition and to stop financing fossil fuels. But the other is the opportunities in what renewable energy can bring, and taking a lot of care in that during this transition and the need of these critical minerals doesn't end in another type of colonization as we have seen it in the past. So with that, thank you so much for listening.